You hear it before you see it. A low rustle in the tall grass, somewhere behind you, moving when you move, and stopping when you stop. Your skin tightens, your breath goes shallow, and your body floods with a chemical surge older than language itself. For most of human history, this was not a nightmare. This was a Tuesday. You like to think of your ancestors as hunters, spear in hand, stalking the great herds, masters of the ancient world. But for a very long stretch of the human story, that picture is backwards. You were not the hunter, you were the hunted. Consider where your kind actually stood on the food chain. You had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom, no speed worth mentioning. A grown human can sprint at maybe 28 miles an hour for a few seconds. Lion does 50. A leopard climbs trees while carrying a body heavier than its own. You were a slow, soft, upright snack walking across an open plain in broad daylight. So how are you here at all? How did an animal this fragile survive a world this hungry? To answer that, you have to go back to a cave in South Africa called Swartkrans. In the 1970s, a paleontologist named C.K. Brain spent years digging through its fossil layers, sorting the bones of early human ancestors from the bones of the animals around them. People had assumed those caves were ancient human homes, littered with the leftovers of human meals. Brain found something else entirely. He found two small holes punched cleanly into the skull of a young hominin. Then he did something simple and brilliant. He took the lower jaw of a fossil leopard and fit its two stabbing canine teeth into those holes. They matched exactly. The spacing was perfect. Those caves were not your ancestor's dining room. They were the leopard's, and your ancestor was on the menu. Brain laid all of this out in a book with a title that says everything. He called it The Hunters or the Hunted. His answer, drawn from the bones themselves, was uncomfortable. For a long stretch of deep time, your family line was prey. The evidence does not stop there. There is a famous fossil called the Tong child, a small Australopithecine skull discovered in 1924. For decades, nobody could explain certain strange marks around its eye sockets. Then, in the early 2000s, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger compared those marks to the damage left by modern eagles on the monkeys they kill. The pattern was identical. The Tong child, it seems, was snatched and eaten by a large bird of prey. Sit with that. One of the most famous fossils in the human story is, most likely, the remains of a meal carried off by a raptor. So this is the world you were born into. Big cats hunt you on the ground. Eagles hunt you from the sky. Hyenas the size of small bears work the dark. Two anthropologists, Donna Hart and Robert Sussman, gathered case after case of this in their book, Man the Hunted, and their conclusion is blunt. For millions of years, predation shaped your ancestors more than hunting ever did. The fear in your body is not a flaw. It is an inheritance. But here's the turn. You are still here. Something worked. The first thing that worked was not a weapon. It was each other. A single human on the savannah is a tragedy waiting to happen. A group of humans is something a predator has to think very carefully about. Watch how baboons survive in lion country, and you see the strategy in its raw form. Many eyes, many alarm calls, many bodies willing to scream, throw, and rush together at a threat. Your ancestors took that same logic and pushed it further than any primate before them. You were not strong, but you were never meant to face the dark alone. So picture an actual night, hundreds of thousands of years ago. You are part of a small band, maybe 25 people, camped in the open. The light is dying, and in the gathering dark, you do the single most important thing your species ever learned to do. You build a fire. Think about what fire actually does to a predator. Almost every large carnivore on Earth is hardwired to fear it, because fire means the uncontrolled wildfires that can wipe out a whole hunting ground. A wall of leaping flame says, to a leopard's deepest instincts, stay away. The Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham has argued that controlling fire reshaped nearly everything about being human, from the food you could eat to the safety of your sleep. That ring of light did more than cook your dinner. It pushed back the night. And around that fire, you and your band stay awake in shifts. Someone is always watching. The eyes never fully close. Now add the second invention. Reach down beside you and pick up the spear. For a long time, scholars assumed early weapons were crude, jabbing sticks, good only for an animal you could already touch. Then, in the 1990s, in a coal mine near Schöningen in Germany, archaeologist Hartmut Thieme uncovered a set of wooden spears so old they stop you cold, roughly 300,000 years old. And they were not clumsy pokers. They were beautifully balanced throwing spears, weighted toward the front exactly like a modern javelin, carved from the hardest part of the tree. 300,000 years ago, your ancestors could reach out and kill from a distance. A predator no longer had to be close to be in danger. The soft, slow, clawless animal had grown a claw it could throw. So let's reconstruct one full day in that world. You wake at first light because the dark belongs to things with better night vision than yours. The fire is down to embers, and the person who held the last watch is rubbing the cold from their hands. You eat what's left from yesterday. Then the band moves, and it never moves carelessly. You walk in a loose cluster, the strong on the edges, the children and the old in the middle, every set of eyes scanning a different slice of the horizon. This is not paranoia. This is the formation that keeps you alive. By midday, the heat is brutal, and here your body reveals its strangest gift. You barely have fur. You sweat from nearly your entire skin. The biologist Daniel Lieberman has shown that this makes you one of the finest long-distance movers in the entire animal kingdom. A leopard can outrun you for 100 yards, but across miles, in the worst heat of the day, it has to stop and pant in the shade while you simply keep walking. So you travel when the great cats sleep. You turn the predator's own strength into its weakness. In the afternoon, you forage, never alone, always within a shout of the group. Someone spots a circling vulture and reads it instantly, the way you read a stranger's face. Someone else watches the grass for the stillness that means something is crouched and waiting. When dusk comes, you build the fire again. You gather close, and you survive one more night the way your kind has survived 100,000 of them. That is the real story of how you beat the deadliest predators on Earth. Not with fangs, with fire, with weapons, with tireless legs, and above all with each other. But now comes the twist, and it is a strange one. You did not just survive predators, you became one. Somewhere along that road, the prey learned to do unto others. The same group coordination that fended off lions could surround a mammoth. The same throwing spears that kept a leopard at bay could bring down the largest animals on the continent. The hunted turned hunter so completely that within a geological blink, your species was driving the very predators that once ate it toward extinction. Lions, cave bears, saber-toothed cats. The thing that had feared everything became the thing everything learned to fear. You are the descendant of the prey that won, and that victory is still inside you right now. That jolt you feel when something moves in the dark and you can't see what it is. That instinct to glance over your shoulder on an empty street. That deep, wordless comfort of being near other people when you are afraid. None of that is weakness. It is the ancient survival kit, still installed, still running, in a body that no longer needs it the way it once did. Your ancestors did not survive because they were the strongest animal in the world. They survived because when the grass rustled in the dark, they did not face it alone. So the next time you hear that low sound behind you, and your skin tightens, and your breath goes shallow, remember what that feeling really is. It is not fear of being eaten. It is the oldest proof that you come from the ones who made it home.